So, hello everyone. It's really great to have you here for this extremely important panel because it's all about our money, right? And our privacy and security. I want to welcome on stage my amazing co-panelists. And I would like to start the panel with a round of introductions. Since I'm speaking, I can start. My name is Maria. I'm the founder and CEO of Ekolance, where we educate professionals to work in Web3, and we activate them, onboard them to work for Web3 protocols and Web3 companies through hackathons, developer challenges, and user challenges. So I would like to give the word, maybe starting here from Jason.
So hello everyone, my name is Jason. I'm working as an ecosystem lead at Zama and a business developer also. So Zama is a cryptography company working on a new cryptographic primitive called FHE, fully homomorphic encryption. FHE is basically a black box. So it's the ability, a magical black box, the ability to compute over encrypted data. So let's say I take my personal data, such as my genomic data. I can send it to a server or a blockchain or a third party that can run an algorithm without even seeing those data. And today we are bringing this technology to the blockchain through a product called the FHEVM, so an EVM with FHE capabilities. And a new privacy use case can come with this.
Thank you so much. Antoni?
Hi, everyone. I'm Antoni. I'm with Aleph Zero. And Aleph Zero is a layer one chain. Everything's open source, of course, permissionless, WASM only. And how we're approaching privacy is through essentially a privacy layer that is based on both ZKPs and secure multi-party computation. Applicability of this is, from what we're seeing for now, is primarily within DeFi, as well as various enterprises.
Thank you. Jarno?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jarno, and I'm a developer relations engineer at Streamr. And Streamr is a Streamr is a real-time data distribution protocol that implements a PubSub pattern. So if that sounds all technical mumbo-jumbo, you could imagine us kind of the glue between devices, real-time data, and Web3.
Hi, everyone. I'm Oliver Gale. I'm co-founder of Panther. Panther is a zero-knowledge DeFi infrastructure. We enable asset managers, wallet providers to compliantly obfuscate senders and receivers and do things like on-chain swaps and interact with protocols, any DeFi protocol that we build adapters into.
Thank you, everyone, for the introductions. And to start the panel, I would like to present some statistics because it's always good to see some statistics. So according to chain analysis, DeFi-related hacks and exploits accounted to over 99% of all cryptocurrency-related crime. A study by the blockchain analytics firm Nansen found that over 70% of DeFi users are vulnerable to at least one type of privacy attack. And DeFi users are also at risk of privacy violations as their on-chain activity can be easily tracked. So all these statistics show us how important this conversation today is. So the first question I would like to ask is, let's define first, what is privacy? Jason, do you want to answer?
Yes. So our definition of privacy, we'd like to separate two different things, the privacy on the blockchain for the data and the privacy of the metadata. So today, protocol like Tornado Cash, they offer you privacy on the metadata. So you can mix the sender and the receiver. You can mix those things. We at Zama, with the FHEVM, we bring privacy to the data itself. So if I'm sending you 10 tokens, everybody on the Block Explorer will be able to see that I am sending to you tokens, but nobody will see the amount. So that's the kind of privacy we are offering today. And we will so call it, we prefer also confidentiality in this case. We give confidentiality to transactions.
Thank you. Does anyone want to add another perspective to privacy? What is privacy?
Sure. I think it's super important to understand the differences between pseudonymity, anonymity, and privacy itself. especially since, when we talk about the general public and they're going to look at Bitcoin transactions or Ether transactions, they're going to just see a bunch of random numbers and letters, and they're going to assume that this is private, which of course it's not. So it's important to sort of dive deeper into the differences between those three, and have an understanding of what actual privacy on chain is.
Yeah, I can also add on that usually the traditional definition for privacy or private information is that piece of information directly or indirectly related to you, like your identity. If it is, then it's private information, and you should have some way to govern and manage that state of the information.
And I think I'd like to add confidentiality on the spectrum of privacy, anonymity, pseudonymity, and so forth, because really confidentiality is what industry is looking for. It's the relationship that we have with all of our financial service providers, healthcare providers, governments, and so on today, where essentially to the rest of the world, to the rest of the market, it is, it could be considered private or anonymous. They really have no information on what you are doing. But between you and a trusted counterparty, there's a confidential data exchange and relationship. And the problem with pseudonymous ledgers is that statistically anyone can infer who the actors are. And so this is what, so from our perspective, we're tackling confidential DeFi, and my colleagues on this esteemed panel are tackling other things like private or confidential computation.
Thank you so much. And I want to welcome Lisa on stage. Lisa, could you introduce yourself quickly? And we were asking the first question, what is privacy?
Hi, I'm Lisa Loud from the Secure Network Foundation. I'm the executive director, and what we are doing is to promote privacy as a service for everybody on every layer one who wants to use privacy and build it into their application. And the question is, what is privacy?
Yes.
All right, so privacy is the most basic thing that we take for granted. And yet, in blockchain, it's missing from most of the industry. Most things are built transparent, and unfortunately, that is not a good foundation for building for the future and for institutional adoption. So privacy is something that matters to every single one of us, and that we all need to be taking seriously.
Thank you so much. So now we spoke about the privacy. Let's speak about the second word here, security. What is security in DeFi?
Yeah, knowing how not to get hacked. Like, I think honestly, on a high level, it's a UX challenge first and foremost, because if we take a look at the last 2 years, for instance, and how the industry tried to attract people from outside of it by giving them new tools to transact and exchange value online. Most of the users came to centralized platforms, and within DeFi, onboarding people is just so much harder because the learning curve is much steeper. So like if we manage to fix both security as well as the user experience in decentralized finance, but also really whatever application there is, this would be one of the most crucial things to tackle. And as far as a direct answer as to what it is, it's the certainty that I'm gonna be okay after realizing a transaction or some action online in this context.
Thank you. This is a very important point you mentioned about user experience and how user-friendly DeFi actually is. And I would like to ask that question a little bit later on. But does anyone else want to give a definition to security?
Yeah, sure. It's actually quite important that we go through these definitions in the beginning because they sound similar, and even the professionals get them sometimes wrong. And typically, security is defined as the way to protect information. So something that is either valuable or it's private information. So you want to protect it somehow, and you want to manage it also somehow. And quite fast, you kind of end up talking about what are the ways to protect them, like advanced encryption methods, ZK proofs, homomorphic encryptions, multiparty computations, etc. But that's kind of the split between the security and privacy.
I just add a small comment that security and privacy are very much related. If you don't have privacy, then security is a much bigger deal and much more difficult. It's like having a car that is factory installed with a feature, and then another car that doesn't have that feature installed. You have to go to great lengths to achieve that at aftermarket installations.
Thank you, everyone. DeFi projects often emphasize decentralization. How can we strike a balance between decentralization and security, especially when considering the potential trade-offs in terms of privacy and trust in the ecosystem?
Yeah, I think when you look at the most decentralized network we have, which is Bitcoin, it's a very static network, relatively speaking, and the infrastructure has been in production for many years at this point. And so it's taken for granted that the infrastructure is secure as well. And I think it's very important that you have secure infrastructure when you're also decentralizing projects, because by its very nature, what you're doing is distributing governance, and that slows down decision making. And in some cases, it removes the ability to do things like address bugs or hacks or upgrade your protocol. And so when builders are working towards decentralization, and it usually is a path towards as opposed to a final destination on day one, you really have to take into account your security model and ensure that your technology is extremely robust, and then be prepared that once you decentralize it, the decision to upgrade it is no longer exclusively within the hands of the original developers. And in some cases, you will not be able to upgrade the protocol and will have to fork it. And again, going back to Bitcoin, you'll see the many forks of Bitcoin, which have had, low to moderate degrees of success.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think to an extent, decentralizing a project is like raising a kid. You start with essentially hoping that you're going to be able to develop something that is able to take care of itself in the end. And we see a bunch of builders also wanting to decentralize something too fast, and then everything, as you mentioned, everything becomes much more complex as far as growing the project, making it more technologically advanced, ensuring that it's safe, actually. So getting to like a sufficient level of decentralization as fast as possible is great. And then this path to completely giving the control away is I would say, much more difficult.
Now, let's talk about data. Is data a feature or a product? Do you want to?
Data.
Continue? Yeah.
Yeah, right. I would say it's a feature like data. Well, it's a difficult question, I guess, but I would say that the way we handle data should be something that product builders definitely focus on the most, especially in the context of privacy, and like the stuff that we sort of grew up in Web2, so with data mining. The problem is that we don't really have very robust alternative business models when we don't really exploit or somehow otherwise commercialize user data. So in the context of, say, again, privacy, if you were to ask like if privacy is a feature or a product, then I would say that it's more of a feature also that can lead to more sustainable business models in the end.
Yes, a quick comment on the data. So far, you were only able to put certain data on the blockchain because you don't have native encryption. So what we want to bring is new use cases where we can put new sort of data on chain. For example, ID data. Today you cannot put them. You have to compute them on chain and put some proof off chain. Sorry, and put some proof on chain to have ID data on chain. Tomorrow with FHE, and there is also other technology, you'll be able to put much more data on chain. So health data, AD data, and lots of different more use cases will emerge. So in this case, data is a feature to answer the initial question because a new use case arrives.
And I would add that even today at Secret Network, you're able to put confidential data on chain. We're using the SGX trusted execution environment in order to provide confidential computing within an enclave. So you can actually you could place your digital identification information on chain, protected by this, by the hardware, and then only those who have the private key to access it would be able to get into that data. And that's a step up from zero knowledge or keeping it off chain with a proof on chain. It's a step up because it is much more decentralized. Everything here is in grades, right? You have to trade off between security and privacy and ease of use. But with Secret Network today, you are actually able to place data in enclave that would be inaccessible except by the smart contract that has the access to it. And then anyone you want can have access to that data to whatever degree you want because it's programmable privacy. So yes, FHE is coming, and that will be a higher level of security, and we're getting there. But even today, there are ways to have on-chain privacy.
Thinking about your original question, I would lean towards saying that data is a good. Privacy is a mechanism, and security are both mechanisms for protecting your data. And the fundamental premise is that if you can protect your goods, then you can leverage them in commercial transactions. Whereas if data is easily replicated, and so certainly digital data, which is what we're talking about. So if you have no privacy of your data, then there's really much less value to it. And so you find yourself in situations where, for example, any alpha you may have as it pertains to your on-chain transactions, your activity. Let's say you're a systematic trader or you're a large investor or market maker. There are many of them. You can go to Arkham and you can see or whale watching accounts, or you can go to Nansen Alpha and you can see whole leaderboards of actors who are on-chain, who have valuable portfolios and whose moves are considered to be important in the market. And there are traders and data analysts who systematically analyze and then exploit that data, usually by front-running MEV attacks and so forth. So, data is a good. It's generated in all kinds of ways. And as sovereign individuals, we all have and do generate valuable data. And the big issue with Web3 today is that 90 plus, maybe 99% of value, which is represented on chain, is represented on ledgers which do nothing really to protect your data. So it's a second order problem to address data privacy, but it's where we're at in the adoption curve. It needs to be solved.
Yeah, I'd like to also add that I love the analogy of data is good, and it's more specifically kind of like anti-rival good, so that more you use it, it has negative subtractability. The more you use it, more it becomes valuable. So you can always, it doesn't go anywhere, we can copy it, it's not away from you, and we can create more value on top of value. But coming to the original question, is it is the product or feature? I guess it depends how you use and package it. So if you think about traditional social media, we create content, we create data on the platform, we consume each other's data, so it's a feature. But then how we use the platform is more data, and it's been packaged and sold to advertisers. So then it's a product.
If it's a product, then whose product is it, right? Like in the past, Google has used our data as a product. Many companies gather data that doesn't actually belong to them, gather data on all of us and sell that. If we can say that a product is also something that a user owns, then privacy allows us to maintain control of that data and use that as a product that we can benefit from.
So I think we have established how important data is for everyone. how do you interpret data security and privacy in your protocol? Lisa, do you want to start?
How do we interpret privacy in our protocol?
Yeah, data privacy.
Data privacy in our protocol. Data privacy is so Secret is a layer 1 protocol. So it has an ecosystem, and the apps will build on top of that ecosystem. So each dApp that builds something on Secret Network defines data privacy in a different way. It uses data privacy in a different way. In some cases, it's central to our product. So it's like we define data privacy as our as our basic value, but each app can use it in a separate way and define it as either their product or their unique selling proposition is that they keep the data private. There's many different ways to take it because we are a layer 1, which covers a lot of different use cases.
Thank you, Lisa. Oliver?
So Panther is focused on on-chain finance. And so the data that we are working to protect is the data of our users as it relates to who they're transacting with and in what amount. The types of transactions are peer-to-peer transactions, swaps, and interactions with any DeFi protocol. This matters particularly in the case of DeFi protocols which are not built on private ledgers, such as Secret. And so that would be, the Ethereums and Solanas going down that list. Smart contract platforms. And really there's this compromise that Panther has been tackling since inception, which is how do you enable actors to have on-chain privacy whilst also enabling full compliance, compatibility? Like how do you have a FCA regulated broker-dealer or a virtual asset service provider of any kind enable themselves or their users to have privacy whilst also being able to report to the regulator? And so that trade-off has resulted in us implementing a number of zero-knowledge compliance schemes and MPC data safes to secure data and house it. And then, as has been pointed out on this panel, user experience is really important as well. How do you create an experience where the user doesn't get lost in the complexity of the technology that underpins the product?
That's actually a question. I guess we differ here a little bit from their backgrounds. That our project is kind of let's say a tool that you could use as a building block for DeFi solutions because it's a data transportation protocol. So it's part of layer 0 and layer 2, where the access control authentication is in layer 2 side itself. But our stance to the privacy is basically that you own your own data. Like it's yours. So when you create a data stream and push it through our network, then you get the encryption keys, you manage it. We don't process it, we don't host it. It's up to you what you want to do with it. We just give you the tools to do it properly.
Yeah, in our case, I would say that we view privacy as something that should be standard everywhere. Like it is really in our daily lives, offline. We like our privacy and we do private stuff. And it's not bad stuff, it's just normal stuff, but private. And then if we sort of establish this as a baseline, then you have two challenges when it comes to exchanging value. And the first one is compliance. So then this sort of grows into how do you make compliance as comfortable for users as possible? How do you ensure that if there is a need to issue verified credentials, like how do you make sure that they just go through the verification process once and then they can reuse it within the ecosystem? And the second thing is UX, because if we, for instance, talk about zero-knowledge proofs, then users have to generate them locally. So this takes a bit of time. So they have to have, like the developers of the product or an environment have to have some way of circumventing the difficulties surrounding the entire experience. So just to sum up, I would say that privacy needs to be talked about in the context also of compliance and UX. And compliance not because of, privacy is in itself is non-compliant, but it may allow dishonest actors to enter the ecosystem and do, various stuff.
I
I try to give the audience, because I'm sure here most of the people are not really technical like us or privacy specialists, so I'll try to give you a global framework for privacy. So in traditional finance, you can trust someone with the data, so you don't have that problem. In blockchain, we don't want to trust people, so we put stuff on chain, but they are transparent. And today, you have 4 different fighters for your privacy on the blockchain. You have FHE, which is what we do at Zama, that I'll explain a little bit later. You have MPC, secure multiparty computation. You have zero knowledge proof, and you have trusted hardware like Intel SGX. So, and you have some software stuff to do it. And we are all trying to mix these technologies in order to remove transparency of the blockchain to give you back the privacy of your data. So now to answer the question more specifically, what we do in FHE, with the FHE VM is that we take an EVM, Ethereum virtual machine, or any other virtual machine. We open it. We add a new precompile calling our FHE library. And with this, we add a new data type, new integer, FHE integer, encrypted integer, sorry. And so with this, the developer in Solidity can write smart contracts with unencrypted data. So that's how we implement the privacy stuff.
Yeah, thank you so much for this explanation. And Antoni, because you mentioned multiple times UX user experience, I would like to talk more about this topic. So how can privacy improve user experience?
Sure. I mean, there's a really, really simple case that I think is going to be close to everyone's hearts. So when you try to send I don't know, USDT on ERC20 to your friend. So you have your MetaMask or whatever, and you send funds or coins or whatever you want to a friend. Then that friend can click on the address, well, your address, and see your entire history of operations, right? So, I mean, depending on how much you like that friend, it can be a good thing or a bad thing, but really, if you want to execute a transfer that would be, well, in this case, pseudonymous, you would have to go to, for instance, a centralized exchange, withdraw funds to a newly, to a wallet that you just sort of, well, generated, and that gives you more, let's say, more privacy. And if you were to use a solution that has this privacy built in, then you can essentially derive different addresses from your main wallet, and you don't have to generate new ones. You just kind of roll with the thing you have and not worry about people peeking into your wallet. So that's the simplest use case, I would say.
Thank you for mentioning that. Does anyone else have an example?
Yeah, user experience. The problem with user experience is that we are all trained from decades of financial, well, if we're just talking about finance, we've been trained to rely on a centralized third party to protect our data, to provide privacy. Now, we all know, I'm sure everybody here has received more than one message that says, there's been a data breach, here's what we're doing to address it, your data has been compromised. So it's not perfect. However, we're all trained to trust that third party to handle our privacy for us. We just hand over our data, we do KYC, we give them our passport or ID, and we trust them to take care of it. Now, in this new world where we're not trusting third parties, centralized third parties, to take our privacy and hold it for us, but it's on the blockchain, it's a whole different point of view. I mean, I've told many, many people how to do crypto. And when I start explaining how their seed phrase works, they get this look in their eyes like, I have to keep track of this or else I lose my money. That's not a good user experience, and it's not what most people are trained for. So moving privacy out of the hands of third parties and into the individual's hands is a very difficult user experience problem to solve. How do we solve that? That's, I think, what we're all working on here, is to make it not only safe and secure, but also understandable for the individual user, for the average user, and easy to understand and easy to not make mistakes about.
Thank you. Oliver, do you want to add?
Well, no, just this, I think Lisa said it very well. Privacy has a cost, and it changes your behavior, and it's typically non-intuitive. And what we're working on is building protocols, systems, tools, technology that essentially move the bar in favor of the user towards them being able to secure and protect their own data. And what you really typically find is that the actors that care about privacy have higher costs associated with not having it. And speaking frankly, there are two sides to that spectrum. There are illicit actors, and there are those who have very sensitive and important or valuable information. And I mentioned some sectors like healthcare, financial services, asset management, really areas where the stakes are high. And this is what we're focused on. And, finance is the prerequisite for a secondary layer app economy to exist. And so it's no surprise that for its duration, the Web3 industry has largely been focused on finance applications. And even a conference like this is one that has a mixed crowd, a lot of institutional representation, asset management representation, because we're at that point where industry is really interested in bringing finance on chain. And the stumbling blocks are, is it functional? We've addressed that largely. Is it scalable and affordable? Blockchains are much faster. Is it secure? Is it private? Is it compliant? And it's those security, privacy, and compliance are really the tractionable problems now that industry is addressing, so that you can bring your financial activity on chain without being, again, the example of the retail user is you look at the wallet and you see the transaction history, apply that to a large enterprise, and you suddenly expose all of the GDPR information, all of the personal data. You reveal how systems and security models operate behind the enterprise or the technology stack. And so there are major concerns. And so, this is the world that is being addressed by the panelists here.
Yeah, this is an extremely important question. As you mentioned, we have a lot of traditional banks here, traditional enterprises here that want to enter this world of DeFi, right? So let's answer the question, how do enterprises want to use private chains?
Well, the first obvious application for private chains is in DeFi. If we think about institutions, financial institutions who want to trade, there's the fact that they want to keep their trading strategies private. So let's just take a step back. And how does DeFi work? How does decentralized finance work? You have these pools that are entirely public and transparent. You interact with them. You place your transaction into the mempool where it can be seen by everybody, and then you execute your strategy in a clear format so everyone can see. Reverse engineer your strategy. They can front run you. If they see that you're about to make a big transaction, they can jump in and make that, do a sandwich arbitrage or buy before you do. So institutions are not very interested in doing DeFi in this clear world of transactions. Put aside the question of regulation, who the counterparties are, but just talk about their strategy. Their strategy is not actually manageable in the current world of DeFi. So what institutions need is to be able to do their strategies privately. And last night we were talking about how it's very important to be able to have, I think Oliver, you said that it's very important to be able to hide your strategy, your overall strategy, but it's also important to be able to execute your strategy without having bad actors, or not necessarily bad, but opportunistic actors come in and siphon off your profitability before you're able to execute your strategy itself. So I think the most obvious application, to come back to your question, in finance for enterprise is being able to do private DeFi, being able to trade and execute your strategy without sharing it and broadcasting it to the world.
Right. Does anyone want to add something to it? No? So
Well, actually, sorry, just quickly, I mean, the the challenge as well is that you have to be able to do this privately, and then superimposed upon that, you have to be able to do this in adherence to your compliance structures. Otherwise, it will never be a mainstream product. And so there's this question of how do you enable privacy and how do you enable confidential and secure data disclosure. And so it's a two-sided problem. One without the other is going to result in a tornado cash or railgun situation where you've got sanctions and illicit actors and criminal incarcerations. And that's an inevitable outcome when you enable this type of sort of unfettered privacy and then offer it into the financial markets for bad actors to exploit.
So, how do you approach KYC and anti-money laundering, and who is actually responsible for KYC and anti-money laundering?
Since I've opened the can of worms, I'll just quickly lead. We have an existential problem with Web3 today around there's an argument which is ongoing as to whether the protocol is responsible or whether the operator is responsible for what happens. And I'm firmly sitting in the camp of believing that it's the operator that is responsible for compliance, for data custody and disclosure, and not the protocol. The asterisk next to the protocol is the protocol has to be sufficiently decentralized, meaning there's no clear ownership or operation at the protocol level. And so the world that we're building towards is one where protocols are credibly neutral. They're not political, they cannot be politicized. They're not interested in one party's view versus another. Their job is to mediate and enable commerce and data transmission and so forth. And operators act on top using these protocols, and these actors are the ones that are offering you a mobile wallet or a MasterCard or a Visa card. And they're responsible for collecting your data, processing your data, and being compliant. And so, I think architecturally, this is how we need to be building our protocols. Legally, this is how we need to be structuring the law. And then when you're operating in industry, you have to know whether you sit in one camp or the other.
That makes sense, but you put protocols and then operators. I think there's another level in there of developers, because we're a protocol.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then there's developers who will create independent applications. They're not necessarily the operators, but they're providing tools. And I think there's a huge amount of responsibility on the developer level to code in a way